So as I get ready to wrap up 2024 and prepare for the new year, I thought it would be a fun idea to make 3 separate videos where I talk about my most favorite games of the year, least favorite games, and most surprising games that kind of came out of nowhere, had a really fun, surprising experience to me. And instead of doing a top 10 like most channels will do because it takes so much work, I'm going to do a top 3. I'm gonna narrow it down to the 3 most favorite that I had, the 3 worst for me, and the 3 most surprising. This is my opinions only, and this video specifically would be focused on the 3 most disappointing games. Now, if there is disagreement, which will happen in the comments, I'm sure, that's fine. I'm down for a discussion. It's just how I felt about the games myself, why I wasn't happy with it, and to start off this list, we are gonna go and maybe hurt some feelings when I say this game, but starting off the list is Black Myth Wukong. Now, I had not much excitement for the game initially. I didn't really care about it. I wasn't really a fan, ready to jump in. I just got the game to review it for the channel, and I hear a lot of people say that it's not a Souls-like, when in fact it is. You cannot deny the fact that it's a Souls-like. It has Souls-like elements. It has a Souls-like difficulty, a Souls-like world, if you will. It may not be open world like some of the more recent Souls-like, but the environments are somewhat open in a way. But like I said, I wasn't really excited for the game, didn't really care, wasn't like jumping in. And the game definitely is challenging. And I'm not saying that I hate a challenge, but I don't like the challenge of a Souls game. I don't like the whole concept of get good. I don't think it's a really good concept for the gaming community. But Black Myth Wukong does have some things that people talked about that I don't agree with. It's not just a boss rush type of game. There is some areas in between the bosses with some variety and some enemies to battle, some secrets to find, and there is some lengthy areas in between bosses. So I don't think it is necessarily a boss rush type of game because I spent quite a bit more time on those in between areas than I did fighting bosses. Now, aside from that, the system of having to go to a specific spot to save, kind of like a campfire from the Souls games, you got to go there to save your progress, and then enemies will respawn, similar to Stellar Blade, similar to Star Wars Jedi, and similar to Souls games. Just like the skill tree, having to unlock new abilities, similar to a Souls game. Being able to use different abilities and special magic, like transforming to a boss, for example. That's something that you typically would see similar in a Souls-like. So the game is definitely a Souls-like game, and I just wasn't really into it. I didn't really care about the story too much. I didn't care about the difficulty or the environments or the bosses. The environment, I think it's the third one with the big lake and the snow. That was a cool environment. I actually like that environment, but the combat was pretty good. I'm not gonna, deny that. The combat has some different combos and moves and different specials you can do, and that was pretty awesome. If you can actually do your combo successfully, then you had some pretty interesting combo moments. But aside from that, I just wasn't really into it, and a lot of people say that Black Myth Wukong was robbed at the Game Awards. I don't think so. There's a lot of factors that go into the Game Awards. Granted, I'm not an advocate for the Game Awards. I'm not a big Game Awards fan. I actually do not like Jeff Keighley, but there is some issues with the Game Awards where gamers don't get as much of a vote as journalists. But I don't think Black Myth was robbed of the Game of the Year. And also, other Ring DLC should have been there anyway. But I don't think Black Myth was robbed the Game of the Year. It still won an award for something, so at least it got a win, right? But again, I'm not really a big fan of Black Myth, so that's my thoughts on that. Moving on to the next game on the list of my least favorite is Rise of the Ronin, another Souls-like. And you might be sensing a trend. I am not a big Souls-like guy at all, but Rise of the Ronin was a problem for me because you have those gamers who feel that graphics and visuals are not as important as the game itself, but I have to disagree. In the current console generation, given the specs of PC gaming, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, we should not be getting games that look as horrendous as Rise of the Ronin. The game also had some issues with performance, some stuttering, some frame rate drops. The environments were really boring and dull. The grapple was really terrible. The glider was even much more terrible. I understand this is not Batman. You're not gonna get the fast grapple and gliding like you do in Batman, but it was really, really bad here. And a lot of people did compare this game to Ghost of Tsushima, and you kind of have to, given the mechanics and the environment and the history and kind of like the region they're trying to explain. It's basically an ancient Japanese story, just in different time periods. So of course, Ghost of Tsushima is a much better game, even though Rise of the Ronin is a bit, much more years in the future. So it is a bit more current, if you will, similar to Red Dead Redemption. Is not as, ancient, but Ghost of Tsushima is obviously the much better samurai slash Ronin warrior game, whatever you want to call it. And Rise of the Ronin had a lot of issues for me. Combat was okay. You did have some good mechanics here and there, but the combat wasn't as responsive as I felt with other games. You do have a really pretty good character customization. I do think that character customization was really good in Rise of the Ronin. Being able to choose either the male or female character, you can change so many different aspects like their height, hair color, hairstyle, eye color. If you choose one of the two characters, you can of course go back and change to the other character if you want. It'll just slightly change the story based on the character's appearance in that story. But I didn't really like the game at all. Again, Souls-like, and it was very, very challenging. The grapple in this game was pretty cool when it comes to combat and also trying to get onto the roof of different buildings, but using it in connection with your glider was just not great. The game did offer some co-op in certain missions. You can have someone play with you and take down, whatever the mission is, or taking down a stronghold, taking down some enemies, and that was pretty cool. There just wasn't as much of a really fleshed out co-op system. Like, let me co-op with a friend and go around the entire game, the entire map with my friend. They don't have that as an option. It's just specific missions. And then of course, when it came to traveling the world, you're better off going on horseback than gliding. The gliding was really bad, as I keep mentioning the bad gliding, but I just didn't like the game. The main character was very bland and blank. I don't like games where the character doesn't have their own dialogue voices. It's just choosing dialogue options and the characters, the NPCs would just respond. I just don't think it's good storytelling, in my opinion. And I didn't really care about the story in terms of how it went with the different factions and siding with one and betraying the other one. I just didn't care. I didn't care enough to follow it, and I got about halfway through the game and just couldn't stick with it. I just wasn't happy with it. Not a great game in my opinion, and I'm not saying it's the worst game out there or one of the worst games. Same thing with Black Myth. Black Myth is not one of the worst games of all time. It's just games that I were not happy with, that I didn't like. So my final game for the most disappointing games for me this year is Hellblade 2. Now, I didn't play the first one. I had no interest in the first one whatsoever, but the second one was on Game Pass, and I figured, let me give it a try. And mind you, Hellblade 2 is the final game that kind of pushed me to sell my Xbox. I had a few bad Xbox experiences that I was like, I'm going to sell my Xbox now. These games are not that great. I'm not fond of them. But Hellblade 2 was the final nail in the coffin to make me sell my Xbox, because the graphics and visuals were amazing. The sound design is amazing, which makes sense given what the game's theme is. But the game itself was really, really bland. It was a very short experience. The combat at first was very cool, something different, and I had some nice fun with the combat at first. But as the game went on, the combat got so repetitive so quickly, and it just didn't have enough for me to stick with the game. Even after beating it, I wasn't gonna do a new game run. I was gonna play it a second time. That one playthrough was enough for me, and I felt the story fell a little bit short. It wasn't as lengthy as I thought it would be. It wasn't as fleshed out as I thought it would be. I feel like they cut some things out. They cut some corners, and this was a game that was in development for a long time, and it just failed to live up to anyone's hype except mine. I didn't have any hype at all, but it didn't do anything for me to be happy and had a good time with it. Like I said, it was the game that I said, screw it, I'm selling the Xbox, I'm calling it a day. That's it. So and that's my 3 most disappointing games of 2024. Again, these are my opinions, just how I feel about the game. So let me know in the comments what you think about these games individually. Did you like them? Did you hate them? And be on the lookout for my next 2 videos for the end of this year, which will be my 3 most favorite games and 3 surprising games. But until then, I am Anthony Olan, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.